Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Derbyshire Dales series. The Dales contain some of the most beautiful British scenery. It's a magnificent area. Here's one of its 109 civil parishes. Welcome back to the Derbyshire Dales, everybody. Now, last week, you will remember, I trudged across some horrible boggy fields in Hulland to get to this point right here. And I fell over a couple of times in the mud. You can see the mud on my gloves, but this is why I'm wearing gloves, just in case that kind of thing happens. My boots are a bit brown, shall we say, but I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm here in one piece. So this is the continuation of that walk. We've done Hulland, and this is Hulland Ward. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Hulland Ward, Long Low Hill Wardgate. Welcome to Hulland Part 2. This is Hulland Ward, a much bigger village than its neighbour, located mainly along the ancient Ridge Road from Manchester to London. A packhorse and coaching route once upon a time, it became the A517 and is still today the main road through the village. It's down to that road that Hulland Ward gets its name. Originally, the village consisted of a few dwellings on the road into the royal forest of Duffield Frith, and it was gated. The gate was known as Wardgate or Woodgate, and over the years, due to its proximity to Hulland Village, it was often known as Hulland Wardgate. Sometime in the 17th century, the gate part was dropped, and the hamlet grew into the village now known as Hulland Ward. In fact, the place has grown a lot since those times. Gone are the days of this being a linear village with a handful of properties on either side of the coaching route. The north of the village has expanded greatly, with a modern 20th century housing estate incorporating a school and a playing field. However, the most interesting part of Hulland Ward remains the Ridge Road, because that's where the oldest landmarks are all to be found. It's a hilly place, not easy to walk around, but at least it's not as boggy as Hulland's fields were. Let's go. After emerging from Hulland's wet and boggy fields via the surgery which you've just seen, we're on the A517, the old Ridge Road which we talked about in last week's episode. Our first landmark is the local shop and a petrol station. There's also a farm shop here. Based in a building known as the Flower House, it sells things like pickles and preserves as well as fresh fish and seafood. It even offers local delivery. Can't say fairer than that. That brings us to a bus stop located close by. Hulland Ward is served by the same buses as Hulland, the 113 to Belper and the 114 to Derby. Next on the left we come to the Queen's Jubilee Garden. This was planted to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. Hulland Ward, like many other villages across the country, held a street party too. There was also one in Hulland Village and in nearby Biggin. All three parishes are covered by the Hulland Herald, which is the local newsletter published quarterly. As we move on down the A517, we pass a block of new houses before the road splits into two pieces. There's some holiday lets on this corner, High Meadow Cottages, perfectly placed for one of the two local pubs. I am of course referring to the Black Horse Inn. Once frequented by travellers on the Ridge Road, the Black Horse has an intimate central bar with 3 small rooms off it. It changed hands in May 2014 after the retirement of its long-serving landlady, and now it's owned by a local farming family. The pub has one of the best scenic views in the area. This is the countryside as seen from the roadside nearby. It's pretty much the same story on Moss Lane, which is the next road we're heading along. Isn't Derbyshire just one of the most picturesque places in the world? I love it. The majority of Hulland Ward is residential. To the north of the Ridge Road, the village has expanded considerably over the last century. The expansion started with 28 council houses in 1950, and 15 years later a large housing estate and modern primary school were built on the northern slope of the ridge, increasing the population to around 1,000 people. Hulland Ward is still expanding today. There are new houses being built as we speak on the land directly to the west of this estate on the highest point of the hillside. Most of the residents here are commuters because Hulland Ward is ideally placed between the towns of Ashbourne, Belper and Derby. Its attractive countryside, plentiful amenities and peaceful setting continue to make it a popular place for families. So after trudging through all that mud on the way to get to this point, this is probably the last thing I wanted to see, another field to cross. But to be fair, this one's not so bad. It's not very long either. You can see a gate in the distance there, and it leads on to Hulland Ward's playing field. We're going to cross the playing field into the housing estate. You can see beyond that. We're going to make a loop then, which comes around the housing estate towards the school, and then back to the main road, and then eventually back to where we began. Hulland Ward's playing field isn't the biggest in the world, but it has the usual necessities. In 2016, a grant of £5,000 was awarded to the Parish Council for improvements to the field. This was used to carry out some landscaping work and improve drainage. The senior football pitch was upgraded and relocated, and 3 new junior pitches were created too. I reckon it all looks pretty decent. Once over the playing field, we're onto Ashes Avenue. This is just a continuation of the housing estate, but we're on the steepest part of it now as the road rises sharply towards the newest houses at the western end of the village. The road turns and becomes Wealden Way before slowly running down the hillside again. You would be forgiven for thinking that all of these streets look the same. At the end of the road, we turn left onto Firs Avenue. This is where we'll encounter the local school, added with the estate in the 1970s. The school has limited availability when it comes to car park space. As a result, there's a dedicated area on Ashes Avenue which is used for drop-off and pick-up. That's a great idea. Here's the school. Education in this part of Derbyshire can be traced back to the 1830s, when the first public elementary school was built in Hulland for 130 children in 1838. After an about turn at the school, we're making our way up Firs Avenue again and back up the hillside. After climbing the hill, another steep one by the way, we're back to the A517, the Ridge Road which Hulland Ward grew up along. This is by far the most interesting area of the village. It's also where the parish notice board is sited, so let's get that job out of the way. Directly opposite this board is the old village stores. That's the stone cottage you can see on your screens right now. With all this modern housing comes modern facilities. Through the trees from here you can spy a BT telephone exchange off Wealden Way. The Ridge Road though is all about houses that were built centuries ago. Check out this attractive white building for example, known as the Cottage. Directly opposite this we have Brown Box Flowers, an award-winning wedding florist which occupies an old saddlery. Here we have the second pub, the Nag's Head. This reopened last year after some 6 months of closure. It's owned by Star Pubs and Bars and is a traditional village local. It's pretty good for food and it's seen as a great community hub. It has sports teams including bowls, darts and dominoes. Over the road are 2 buildings which are remnants of Hulland Ward's past. The house in shot here is an old blacksmith's forge. There were 2 of them in Hulland Ward and the last one only closed 30 years ago. Next to it is an old wheelwright's. Both were vitally important to the old coaching road. There's a handful more old properties like this ivy-covered effort on the right before we reach our last landmark, right on the border with Hulland. This is the Hulland Ward sewage treatment works. It was built in the 1960s, and in 2014 Severn Trent Water replaced the 50-year-old conventional biological filter works with a new reed bed. It discharges into the River Ecclesbourne. And folks, we've reached the end of the two Hullands. That's one route that I definitely never ever want to walk again. Not because it's particularly difficult hill-wise, just with the horrible muddy fields. It's just, that's what's tired me out here, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, they're done, thankfully, and they're in the books. 2 more down in the Derbyshire Dales. Now, before we leave Hulland Ward behind, there's one more thing I need to do, and that's take you on a little drive back across the border into Amber Valley. You see, between Hulland Ward and Amber Valley, there's another settlement which has got a very interesting name and an equally interesting story to go with it. Right on the border between the Dales and Amber Valley is a place called Cross of the Hands. It's a tiny hamlet based around one single road which runs into Turnditch. A curious name, you'll agree. It comes from its former pub. It was called Cross of the Hands thanks to its location near a gravel pit that was used for staging bare-knuckle fistfights. What a piece of history that is. Time to leave Hulland Ward B now and move on to the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll be back to the Derbyshire Dales very soon. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.